Most people have experienced a catharsis of some kind in their past, and most people will again agree that it is a very healing, liberating experience that makes us feel lighter than before we had our catharsis. And hopefully you agree with me on that. I know for me personally, looking back in history, there's been a few pivotal moments in my life where my energies peaked, built up to some sort of a climax, and then an emotional eruption happened where I released a lot of stored up gunk within me, and that is the process we call a catharsis. Now, if you are just living life, it is very natural for these cathartic experiences of releasing your emotional baggage. It is very natural for that to happen every now and then, just naturally. But if you're a skilled meditator and you've developed your skills of focus, clarity, and equanimity, then you can actually induce an experience of catharsis if you see it would be helpful to do so in a particular, perhaps subtle sphere of life. So what do I mean by this? I think the best way to explain it is to straight away give an example. And I think jealousy is a great example. Because most people, we don't acknowledge any jealousy that we have carried around in us. It's very easy to sweep that emotion under the rug and to pretend like we don't have jealousy. And for most people, it's not like an eruption of huge emotion when they get jealous. It's quite subtle. So just to give a silly example, you know, on this YouTube channel, I like to give straightforward, sometimes funny and silly examples. If you're just sitting at a cafe and a Ferrari drives past, perhaps it's a convertible red Ferrari, and the guy inside looks really young, he's obviously inherited a lot of money, and he's just having a good time in his Ferrari. Usually if we're sitting at a cafe and we see that, you know, maybe subtle feelings of jealousy will come up, but, you know, it's very easy to just brush that under the rug. But as you become more experienced in meditation, you can perhaps notice that little seed, that little ripple of jealousy. And if you want to induce a catharsis, a release of all the stored up jealousy that you have within you, what you can do is later on, you can sit in meditation and allow yourself to feel those emotions and for them to come pouring out. So at first, it might be like a little ripple or a little stream. But as you allow the floodgates to open, you can really notice, sometimes very surprisingly so, that you're opening a Pandora's box of karma, and that there is so much more jealousy, for example. There is so much more jealousy stored up within you than you first thought. And that can be a very interesting process. Now, this will be very easy or not so easy, depending on your skill and experience of meditation, but you can verbally tell yourself something like, I am now sitting down and meditating, and I am allowing myself to feel the emotion of jealousy. And you can even start expressing in your inner voice the sort of words that you want to say to express that jealousy. Like, you can start telling yourself, why do some people just have loads of money when they're young and I had to work my ass off for my money and still I can barely buy a hatchback? You know, just to be silly. You can start expressing some vocals, some words associated with the emotions of jealousy, and basically just let the emotion of jealousy spiral out of control and amplify like a Pandora's box. Just totally let everything come pouring out. Now, to clarify once again, I'm just using jealousy here because it's a simple example, but this could be about many other things in life. Another one that people very easily sweep under the rug is perhaps regret from past life situations, perhaps from past life experiences, you know, perhaps relationships. So regret is another big one. Also disappointment, also unacknowledged hurt, perhaps feeling weak. There are a lot of shadow emotions which we can easily hide away. But once we can detect just a little bit of it, if we fully feel those emotions, let them come pouring out, I like this visual of Pandora's box. We can open a box within us and all this energy comes pouring out like a volcanic eruption of emotion. So, everything I've talked about here, hopefully it makes sense to you. This is how you can induce a cathartic experience, an eruption of emotions. But we don't want to do this just for the heck of it. We want to do it for healing purposes. We want to release this stored up energy, not just experience it and then return back to normal. At least that's what I'm proposing today. So how do we go about experiencing this catharsis, this volcanic eruption of emotions? How do we, experience that in a healing way? So what I would suggest is maybe a little bit counterintuitive, but it is basically to do self-inquiry during this volcanic eruption. And what self-inquiry is at its core is to ask yourself, who am I? Who am I? And I'm going to give you the answer here. Who you are is the I of consciousness. You are consciousness. So all this emotion that comes flooding up, perhaps you can now have a visual of being caught in a stormy ocean with massive waves breaking on you. These emotions that come up out of the Pandora's box from the catharsis, they might be uncomfortable emotions. So it can be like a swimmer flailing in the ocean. But all you do is keep inquiring inwardly, who am I? And then you keep finding the answer that you are consciousness. And what this does is it allows you to simply see, totally just see the waves of emotions crashing on you, going over you. And for how many ever hours you need to do this, you just let these emotions pour over you and you just see it as the eye of consciousness. You allow the waves, you don't struggle with the waves of emotions, you just experiencing them, you just experience them and keep floating, keep seeing with no judgment. You're just an eye of consciousness, experiencing it, witnessing it. And that simple act of witnessing it with consciousness, that in itself is very healing and it allows the emotions to come up because they are leaving. So I hope all of this makes sense to you. Now, if you have been experiencing or been doing meditation for quite some time, and perhaps you've gotten into Kriya Yoga, in particular the practice of Shambhavi, I actually have a whole other video about how you can, for yourself, see the chakras in action. If you've gotten to that stage, and this topic is for a little bit of advanced meditators, if you can start to see your own chakras, then this process can be extremely interesting, the process of a catharsis. Recently, I've been going through something like this for myself, which is why I'm making this video now. And the visuals are so interesting because you can literally see in your imagination space, in your sensational space, it's really interesting. I'm sure this would be something that many other people could also see for themselves and relate to. It is like a thunderbolt or a lightning bolt striking a particular chakra. That chakra almost catching fire, spinning like crazy, and then shooting out dust and particles like a sunflower flower. If you can imagine a flower, the sunflower, they have tons and tons of seeds within them. And the faster that sunflower spins, the more gunk gets thrown out. And of course, this gunk is the stored up energy within us, and this catharsis is the release of that stored up energy. Now, any catharsis will release stored up energy, but if you're at the stage where you can see your chakras, it's just very interesting to notice how your chakra can get activated by allowing yourself to feel the emotions. The chakra can go into overdrive, spewing out all kinds of stuff. And that spewing, quite literally, at a visual level, you can see you're becoming lighter, more liberated, more free. And if you can think back perhaps to a catharsis you've had in the past, the huge benefit here is you feel lighter, more connected to your heart, and there's just a huge clarity in your consciousness, and this huge feeling that this weight that you've been carrying around your whole life has been lifted, and you are now free from it, more connected to your heart, more clearly connected to your heart,